Di Khenpo Sodargye Udāna Sūtra L15.
The supreme, profound, and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in 100,000 eons. Now we hear and follow it, may we realize the Tathagata's meaning. In order to truly liberate all sentient beings from suffering, let us all give rise to the genuine, unsurpassed bodhicitta with compassion. We will continue to discuss the profound Udāna Sūtra as taught by the enlightened Buddha. Now, we are actually currently talking about the 4th chapter of this text, right? It is indeed called the chapter on vigilance. Is it truly the profound chapter on vigilance, or perhaps the chapter on negligence that we are discussing? Right now, we are discussing how practitioners should not be negligent in their daily spiritual practice. As we diligently study these principles, we have also talked about this significant aspect before. The main and crucial point is that we are not just studying for the mere sake of a superficial literal explanation. Literal explanations alone are truly not very meaningful or sufficient for a complete understanding. For each verse, see if you can find what you personally need right now to counteract afflictions and practice diligence in your daily spiritual journey. This is the kind of teaching we are looking for, because the Buddha, in front of many different sentient beings, taught so many profound and sacred verses. It is truly impossible for any of us not to find a teaching that truly resonates deeply with our very own mind stream. So, even when we talk about academic exams, we keep it relatively brief and relate each verse to our own mind stream. This is something we should also consider. Of course, if I as the speaker cannot relate it myself, then what I say to you may not be very suitable either. But each of us should. We all need to reflect. For example, if we discuss a few verses each day, what kind of specific benefit does this particular verse bring to my own mind stream right now? What kind of lasting benefit does it actually have for me? This is very important indeed. Next, let us continue our discussion with the Udāna Sūtra. Yesterday we talked earlier about those individuals who are negligent, exploring how their hard-earned reputation will inevitably be damaged. Conversely, for those who are truly vigilant, their good name and virtuous reputation will undoubtedly spread far and wide. This was the main point discussed. Of course, reputation is something worldly people pursue much, but when it comes to spreading the Dharma benefiting sentient beings, having some significant reputation, a certain bit of status, or some strong academic credentials, these may sometimes be necessary as well for the same person. But if you don't have a reputation, it seems that nowadays people are especially eager for fame and profit and may not necessarily accept it. So, from the perspective of benefiting others, sometimes it's necessary to have some reputation. If you possess a strong reputation, then what you articulate, even if it's the very same language as others, people will invariably demonstrate special respect and acceptance. This is a distinct possibility. So today, continuing on, diligently cultivate the mind and be carefully cautious in all of Buddhist practices. Always remain calm and mindful. Those who guard themselves have no worries or distress. This particular verse mainly teaches us to gradually develop a mind of meditative concentration through practice. Once you have truly cultivated a mind of meditative concentration, you will possess the wisdom that follows the Buddha's teachings. You will often remain calm, maintaining right awareness and mindfulness consistently. Those who constantly guard themselves in this way are actually free from worries and distress. This is the main aspect being analyzed here. It mainly refers to the time of the previous Buddha, namely Kashyapa. He diligently practiced meditation together with his devoted Shravakas, disciples. At that particular time, many bhikshus became deeply attached to the profound taste of meditation. After that experience, many individuals remained completely immersed in its tranquil essence. They were constantly in a state of meditative concentration. At such times, the Buddha spoke this particular verse specifically for these certain people. It should indeed be these next two verses, I truly think. Some people also say, however, that at that time in the Sangha, some newly arrived bhikshus suddenly joined the assembly. The Buddha then gave this teaching specifically for them. Perhaps at that time they were not very diligent or were rather negligent. Such situations did occur, so the teaching was given for their sake. In other words, our specifically enhanced mind mainly refers to the cultivated mind of meditative concentration achieved through practice. When the mind is truly in meditation, it enters a profound state free from attachment and suffering. In fact, this particular kind of meditation is a profound form of discipline. Of course, there are many different ways to fully explain this concept, but mainly, if we have a mind of meditative concentration, we must not be negligent. If we are negligent, our meditative mind cannot be perfected. So when meditating, the mind must be focused. You absolutely shouldn't be playing with your phone one moment, watching TV the next, or going out to have fun for a while. If you then try to meditate, it simply won't work at all. Nowadays, some people at meditation centers often keep their doors closed too. They tell others, "I'm in retreat." But in reality, they're not in retreat. They just simply lock up the place and then leave. Some people also appear to be in retreat on the outside, but inside they are constantly distracted, surfing the internet, watching live streams. This way, there is no enhanced mind or elevated mental state. They are completely indulging in carelessness. Outwardly, they advertise, "I'm meditating," but in reality they might not meditate even for a moment. Then, if the mind can truly settle upon this firm foundation, one can diligently study the various profound disciplines taught by the Buddha. This primarily refers to the crucial aspect of wisdom, because the Buddha, in actual fact, completely eradicated all afflictions. Moreover, he is widely known throughout the world as a truly great Arhat. The profound teachings given by the great Arhat are correct, flawless, and reveal the true nature of reality. If we study them, some uncommon wisdom will also arise within our own personal continuum. After that, we should carefully distance ourselves from all worldly afflictions. To effectively counteract these afflictions is truly called tranquility. In fact, the human mind can become completely tranquil, and at the same time, within our own continuum, we should frequently and diligently observe our own mindfulness and awareness continually. If we diligently protect and safeguard our mind in this profound and meaningful way, in fact, in our daily lives, there will be absolutely no afflictions whatsoever, no profound suffering at all. We will experience no distress, no suffering, and no emotional pain in any aspect of our existence. This specific state of being free from suffering, in fact, reveals that there are many practical methods for dedicated practitioners like us to be free from worry and distress in daily life. If we are truly free from worry and distress, there are many significant things we can accomplish as well. I think this profound concept is explicitly mentioned in the Lotus Sutra, isn't it? Those who diligently and sincerely recite this revered sutra are consistently and perpetually free from worry and distress, experiencing a state of profound inner peace and liberation. Those who recite this sutra simply means the people who regularly read this sacred scripture with devotion. Those who recite this sutra are always free from worry and distress throughout their lives. In the past, when Khenpo Chokyap sometimes gave teachings, when he himself couldn't find a good quote, he would repeat it over and over again, emphasizing it strongly. So, those individuals who diligently recite this sacred sutra are always completely free from all worry and distress. Indeed, sometimes our minds are troubled. In such cases, we should often read the Avatamsaka Sutra, or read the Shurangama Sutra or the Diamond Sutra. This also includes many recitations in our Tibetan Buddhist tradition. At such times, the mind settles. Some people practice meditation. Their minds are free from worry, distress. Some study sutras and treatises, learning the disciplines taught by the Buddha. They too are free from suffering and distress. Sometimes, indeed, just as was mentioned earlier, the mind is in a state of tranquility. If one relies on right mindfulness and right awareness, not be troubled daily like ordinary people. There are people who cannot listen, contemplate, or practice teachings, remain quiet place continuously. But if they do things for the monastic community, they will also not be troubled. As mentioned earlier in the Avatamsaka Sutra, for example, serving the Buddha, taking refuge in the Buddha and Dharma, and do some volunteer service work for the benefit of the monastic community, these will not bring distress. Skillfully guiding the community, the mind remains free from worry and distress. Therefore, one can ensure the continuity of the Sangha jewel if we do things for the monastic community, and our minds are truly never troubled, and the activities of the Sangha always continue without any interruption. This is meaningful. Each of us. I enjoy listening, contemplate, and practice teachings, but if no one do volunteer service work, it absolutely won't work. Especially when doing some volunteer service work for the monastic community, everyone should not be too lazy. At that time, you shouldn't try to be clever, thinking, I can just avoid this once. Constantly hiding from responsibilities for the Sangha and avoiding them yourself, this also won't do. Whatever you do for the Sangha, it is extremely and profoundly meaningful. So what exactly is the main and central point being discussed here? The main and crucial point is to diligently and carefully avoid any form of negligence. At every single moment, we should always be a true practitioner. Just as it is repeatedly emphasized in the Bodhicāryavatara over and over again, not being negligent is extremely, extremely important. If you are someone who is not negligent, even your daily meditation practice will yield significant results. For example, every single year at our Buddhist Academy, we see there are special periods dedicated to meditation retreats. At those times, those who truly practice well stay on. Those who don't practice well might already be planning. Oh, at that particular time, everyone will be meditating, and I might well be the most distracted then. Where exactly should I go? They might indeed think like this. It's the same with studying. The Buddha is the able one, and the teachings of the able one are actually the best way to counteract fundamental afflictions and latent tendencies. But if someone is negligent and distracted, then there's simply no way for them to truly learn. They can't absorb the teachings, and their mind can't focus. Because the Dharma has profound meaning, without a certain level of concentration, it's impossible to master it. In the same way, whether you're on retreat or not, or doing any kind of Dharma propagation or activities to benefit others, you truly, really need to have a focused mind. Along with a focused mind, you also need to be cautious. Here, we refer to this free from negligence. In daily life, we use words to describe it. Cautious. Cautious means careful and meticulous. It means being very attentive and staying alert. Many people in the world are like this. Wow, this person is reliable. He's someone who pays special attention to things. But then they'll say, oh, this person isn't good. Whatever he does, he always leaves things unfinished. He definitely won't do a good job. This is a very negligent person. Negligence is not only a very significant major fault in Buddhist practice, but also a truly serious flaw in general life. Even when doing absolutely anything in the world, if someone is negligent, no one will feel at ease with them. This person has no restraint over their body, speech, or mind. They say exactly whatever comes to their minds and do whatever they truly want. They have absolutely no self-control at all. It's just like a wild elephant or a wild horse. A wild elephant or wild horse has no master. It just runs around and dashes about as it pleases. No one is there to control it. In the same way, our mind is originally just as described in the Bodhicāryavatara. There's no difference between it and a wild elephant. If a careless person, then you might indeed be capable of committing any conceivable evil deed. So it is clear that many of these deeply disturbing behaviors are truly frightening to witness and contemplate. Perhaps in many significant aspects our very mind is profoundly driven and influenced by all kinds of pervasive and powerful afflictions. At such times the master within us has no real ability to control it. This is a truly terrifying thing. Therefore, if we truly practice meditation regularly and frequently study the profound meaning of the Dharma, while relying on quiet places, staying away from distractions and trivial matters, and then use mindfulness and clear awareness to guard our mind, then perhaps in their everyday daily life, this person's spiritual practice and cultivation will also be very good and deeply rooted. So for some of us who frequently go out into the world, our minds should not be troubled or disturbed by external circumstances. The main reason for a mind free from distress, on the one hand, it is that if one is truly diligent, there will be absolutely no distress. If one is especially diligent, they will always remain in a very happy and contented state. But if one violates the sacred precepts or breaks certain rules, then the mind will always be in a continual state of regret, which is also a kind of suffering. It is also possible that we become attached to worldly wealth and fame, and in this way we cannot achieve our goals, which is also very distressing. If none of these are present and you serve the monastic community and sentient beings with this mindset, then even if some things in your life are not going particularly smoothly, this individual will consistently be cheerful and genuinely joyful. Therefore, it is often observed that the majority of the tears we, as human beings, tend to shed are primarily for our own personal self-interest. Very rarely do we truly shed tears because we are thinking of our teachers and the three jewels. It is indeed very rare to shed tears for such profound reasons. Most of our suffering and sorrow, unfortunately, are all caused by the selfish desires and self-interest of ordinary people. It is this mindset that leads to them. In our daily lives as well, among practitioners and those who study and contemplate the teachings, you can see some people they are very relaxed and also very happy. They do not really experience any particularly intense suffering in any way at all. Such people likely possess a mind of altruism and also have a mind that is not careless or negligent. In daily life, whether speaking, acting or thinking, they often have a vigilant awareness, like a sentry of right mindfulness and right understanding, to maintain the state of their mind. At such times, they consistently adhere to this predetermined path, never veering off the intended track and certainly never deviating from this established course. In this way, they themselves also feel very comfortable, because over a long period you have already become accustomed to it. Isn't it said in the Bhiksha precepts, even when walking just beyond the distance of a yoke's length ahead, one should not look around aimlessly. In this way, their demeanor and comportment are diligent and disciplined. This is what is called vigilance or non-negligence. Therefore, in Buddhism, vigilance is extremely important. And not only in Buddhism, but also in other worldly contexts and other religions, vigilance is actually the absolute highest standard for any person. A person who is truly vigilant has indeed attained a certain much higher level of profound realization. On the level of thought, there is also a distinct state that is quite different from what ordinary people typically experience. Following this, it appears there are indeed 2 or possibly even 3 significant verses presented here. In our commentary, things do indeed jump around a little bit. When you read it later, I remember in the ancient Tibetan text, the symbol in the Tibetan script above, on pages 325 and 323, I think, specifically among these various passages, because there are a few verses mentioned earlier that appear below in the text, and the verses below are slightly moved up. In the very middle, we need to switch, just like reciting a ritual text. If you simply follow the strict order of the commentary, it's a little bit hard to precisely find it. When I first personally tried to locate it, I also experienced some significant difficulty. It seems these 2 verses, this particular verse and the one immediately below it, should be a few pages apart, and then further down, another significant verse below is brought up. There is such an explanation. When you look at the Tibetan text, there are just a few very slight differences like this indeed. Do not rely on inferior things. Do not indulge in negligence. Do not seek wrong views. Do not increase worldly concerns. This specific negative word is actually the same word that appears here in the text. Here it mainly talks about completely eliminating negligence through mindful practice. Then it briefly discusses the following 2 verses, which are primarily intended indeed to eliminate negligence. This was mainly at that time. There were some extremely wicked men whose behavior was not in accordance with the Dharma. The Buddha spoke these teachings specifically for such people. It is also said that there was a group of negligent monks, and these teachings were addressed to them. In any case, as for the literal explanation, do not rely on inferior things. It seems that this verse has 3 different ways of interpretation. But most importantly, if I were to choose just one thing for those individuals who are not negligent, there are a few things to pay attention to in daily life. There are several such points. The first important principle is, do not rely on inferior things. Inferior things or various phenomena are actually those specific actions that increase afflictions and break our spiritual precepts. Among the three trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom, this pertains to the training in morality. Do not rely on inferior matters related to greed, anger, and ignorance, these afflictions. In this way, one can uphold pure precepts. This is the discipline of morality. Then do not rely on negligence. If you are negligent, your mind will always be in a state of distraction and also caught up in desire. So this mainly refers to the training in concentration among the three trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom. Do not be negligent. If you are negligent, you will not be able to cultivate meditation. Not being negligent refers to the training in concentration. Do not seek out wrong or erroneous views. The main point is to eliminate the afflictions of wrong thoughts. This mainly refers to the training in wisdom. The training in wisdom among the three trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom. In this way, one cannot increase worldly things. The worldly refers to what we call samsara, the five aggregates. All kinds of faults within the entire world. This truly means not increasing wrong views. In other words, we have effectively eliminated inferior things. Another clear way of explaining this is to completely eliminate inferior things. In fact, it refers to the self-centered mind of the Shravakayana, the vehicle of the hearers. If we do not rely on negligent, as we often say in the world, those individuals with strong desires and intense cravings, such behavior is quite common and frequently observed, is certainly not acceptable in the bodhisattva path. It simply won't work. Finally, do not seek wrong views, because wrong views are the antidote to wisdom. If one holds wrong views, none of our actions can be truly proper or in accordance with the sacred Dharma. After this, all worldly afflictions like greed, anger, and ignorance will only significantly increase. Because wrong views are the most crucial and fundamental thing on the Buddhist path, they are what must be eliminated above all else. If, once in a person's mental continuum, wrong views arise, then that person is truly beyond any help or assistance. So, as is very often and widely said in the world, as soon as wrong views or incorrect perspectives arise, everything is completely destroyed and ruined. There once used to be a folk tale, or so the story goes. There was an 80-year-old woman. She was extremely attached to her material possessions. But one day, by accident, while checking in her rice jar, she might not have realized it at the time, somehow a quantity of potent rat poison was inadvertently poured into her precious rice jar. As a direct result, all the stored rice became thoroughly contaminated with the dangerous rat poison. After this unfortunate contamination, she found herself unable to bear the thought of throwing all that valuable rice away. So she gave it to her family to eat. In the end, everyone in the family died. Then she was filled with deep regret. Later, she thought to herself, oh, maybe people truly cannot consume it, but if I feed it to her chickens, it should certainly be fine. She raised a significant number of chickens at home, so she ultimately fed the poisoned rice to her chickens. After feeding it to them, all the chickens all died. When all the chickens then died, because so many people in her family had died, many guests came to pay their respects. At that time, she still couldn't bear to waste the chicken meat. So she took the chicken meat and stewed it for the many people who came to the memorial service to eat. As a truly tragic result, the entire village was severely poisoned by this dangerous toxin. It's not entirely clear whether people ultimately died afterwards or not, but this story has been told from the past. Actually, this seems like a very simple story from the world, doesn't it? Perhaps it's really fake, or maybe it's indeed true. But no matter what, in the entire continuum of a person's life, if even a single wrong view arises, that particular wrong view can significantly influence many people. For example, some university professors nowadays, if they themselves hold wrong views, then all the students who are connected with them will end up having wrong knowledge and wrong views as well. Among all kinds of views, wrong views are the most frightening. So-called wrong views, of course, possess various distinct and often complex different levels. However, genuinely harmful and truly wrong views in our contemporary world are not believing in the three jewels, not believing in cause and effect, or even not believing in the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Path. He completely denies all such merits and virtues, but he doesn't have the wisdom or ability to refute them either. He simply doesn't believe. Then the words of wrong view stemming from this disbelief spread from 1 to 10 and from 10 to 100. In the end, everyone around him is infected by this poison. So now, including our esteemed Dharma teachers and also some dedicated lay practitioners, those individuals who possess a certain level of spiritual ability and understanding, if they themselves are tainted by wrong views, then whether they are teaching the Dharma or giving lectures, or giving talks, counseling or guidance to others, or even performing life release, much of their misguided guidance often leads people astray, unfortunately. This is especially frightening. Therefore, if we have the ability in the future, the first thing we must do is to ensure that those connected to us develop a genuine right view, a correct understanding of cause and effect. This is extremely important. If we ourselves do not have a correct view of cause and effect, no matter what kind of monastic robes you may choose to wear or what kind of truly significant position you might hold, it will inevitably bring to all sentient beings an utterly unspeakable kind of profound disaster. So sometimes what we truly call wrong views, those truly erroneous and mistaken views that fundamentally deny the very principles of cause and effect, may not necessarily be found among monastics. Even if someone truly holds such views, they might indeed be quite embarrassed to openly admit it. But in our Tibetan region, some of the young people have started to openly say, "I just don't truly believe in anything. I just don't accept these kinds of things. I'm just doing it to make money. Other than making money, there's nothing else in my eyes, so what? What benefit has the Buddha brought to any of you anyway?" And so on. They say these things openly. But if you say things like this, nowadays speech is free, so it doesn't really matter. It can't really do much harm. However, it might actually be harmful to a very small number of people. It truly can be harmful, because these people do not have genuine right knowledge and right view themselves, nor do they have the wisdom that cannot be taken away by others. As a direct result, they simply go with the flow and merely parrot what others readily say. In the very end, they fall into a truly terrifying abyss themselves. It's really quite pitiful. So when some people's negative karma manifests, they seem to be especially eloquent and think they are very capable. But in reality, they are often truly thoughtless and genuinely heartless in their actions and decisions. Many individuals who possess no independent opinions of their own also blindly follow them without question. These people mistakenly believe that they are really something quite special. They shamelessly, right there in front of absolutely everyone present, start spouting all kinds of utter nonsense. This kind of phenomenon still appears nowadays. But at such times, one must use one's own wisdom to examine one's own mind stream. Otherwise, if you don't have a relatively profound wisdom, it's very, very likely indeed that you'll just simply follow the crowd, running along with all the other people, without question. And in the very end, you might potentially fall into the lower realms at any given moment, and no one may even know when it happens. Ultimately, you alone will bear the consequences of karma. So here it is said that in our daily conduct, we must never rely on any negative or harmful practices. There are indeed such harmful practices, including behaviors like frequently drinking alcohol and smoking. For lay people, there are many negative practices among them. If you follow these negative practices, you yourself become unruly and unrestrained. And furthermore, if you associate with people who have wrong views and wrong understanding, no matter wealthy or not, status or beauty, none of it will be any help. In the end, both you and others will truly be ruined. It is really quite truly pitiful and beyond all remedy. So sometimes people really are, in fact, quite truly and genuinely on this one-way road, our journey in life. And this particular one-way road, if you take the wrong path, you will only truly realize it much later on. By that critical time, your precious life may already be at its very end. It's very sad, so you must be very careful indeed. That's what this truly means. Now then, moving on to the next part. Regarding this significant verse, it is also very frequently quoted by many eminent Tibetan masters and truly great teachers. It also prominently appears in some other important scriptures. It seems that this verse circles back to what was mentioned earlier. In the previous commentary, as discussed earlier on in detail, the main point here is that if we look it up in our present-day Tripitaka, specifically in the various treatises and texts, including in some works by Mipham Rinpoche, it is indeed said that this was spoken by the great master Aryadeva. There are also such accounts as well. I remember in the past, His Holiness often quoted this. When quoting it, His Holiness or other treatises, this was said by Bodhisattva Nagarjuna. There are accounts as well. I saw in the Samyukta Sutra, the Tibetan version of the Samyukta Sutra does not have it, but in the Chinese version it should be this one. If there are those who have superior worldly right view, these are just the first 2 lines. Even after hundreds or thousands of lifetimes, they will never fall into the lower realms. Here, in the Tibetan version, it only says 1,000, in 1,000 lifetimes. And then, in that version, even after hundreds or thousands of lifetimes, they will never fall into the lower realms. This is what is stated in the Samyukta Sutra, because at that time, they asked me to translate the Samyukta Sutra. I translated about 30 or so volumes. Each one of them is a very short sutra. Later, Khenpo said there was no need for me to translate as someone else was doing it. So I stopped at that point. Last year they said no one is translating it and asked me to do it. I said, how could it be that simple? One moment they ask me to translate, they say not to translate. So I decided not to translate. I said, I haven't translated. So in the Samyukta there are quite a few cases that are very similar to what is precisely described in our Udāna Sūtra. There are quite a lot of such situations indeed. What it truly means here is that those individuals with worldly right view, those who possess worldly right view at the very beginning, this worldly right view is not supramundane. As for the supramundane, there are also many kinds of right view, including the Madhyamaka view and the Yogacara view. Even within the Shravaka schools, the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika have different right views. There are also the most ultimate views. But here, what is being discussed is the initial worldly view among ordinary people. So what is the worldly view? It's just like what we say. Good deeds bring good results and bad deeds bring bad results. The right view of the 3 jewels, the right view of the 4 noble truths, wholesome views, these views. If in the world someone possesses a worldly right view, then that particular person is truly endowed with very great power indeed. As for great power, the commentary thoroughly explains that it is indeed a kind of immense, great strength, a truly powerful and formidable force, an exceptionally mighty strength, in whomever's mental continuum such a great worldly right view exists. In fact, if one has a worldly right view, it is a kind of great power, a great force. Because when I used to explain this phrase before, the word great was not very easy to explain. This part is hard to explain. It has always been like this. But later, I saw that some great masters had also explained it, and their explanations are clear. The meaning is that worldly right view is truly extremely powerful, indeed extremely mighty. If such a right view exists in someone's mental continuum, then that person will indeed, for 1,000 lifetimes, will not fall into samsara. Even if they are in samsara, they will not fall into the 3 lower realms of hell, hungry ghosts or animals. So this great power that we are discussing, which holds significant importance, is actually explicitly and clearly mentioned within the comprehensive 6th chapter of the revered Buddhist philosophical text, the Abhidharmakosha. Isn't that correct? Attaining forbearance prevents one from falling into the lower realms. It should most certainly be in the 6th chapter, without a doubt. And this principle is also included in the ornament of clear realization, where related commentaries also say that the path of accumulation has this quality, minor, medium, and great paths of accumulation. Then, as for the path of preparation, there are the distinct stages of warmth, peak, forbearance, and supreme mundane dharma. At the stage of warmth, there is minor power. At the stage of peak, there is medium power. And at the stage of forbearance, there is indeed great power. So when one attains the stage of forbearance, one will fundamentally never fall into the 3 lower realms. Therefore, the 1,000 mentioned here may be a figurative number, specifically signifying an exceptionally long and extended period of time. In other words, it represents a vast duration. Because one has attained the great power, the stage of forbearance, or if one has attained a truly unwavering and firm understanding of emptiness, indeed, at the time of such certainty, no matter what, really, they will not fall into the 3 lower realms, which are typically understood as the realms of animals, hungry ghosts, and hell beings. So here it means that even if such a person lives for thousands of lifetimes, they will absolutely not fall into these unfortunate states of existence. Otherwise here, if the specific stage of forbearance only actually meant not falling for exactly 1,000 lifetimes, and then falling after that, that's not the meaning here. So here we are. Yes, actually, this 1,000, sometimes we still need to explain it using the Tibetan term. I hope that during our oral Dharma examinations we can do this properly. Otherwise, I notice that some of you during the exams. Some individuals keep adding a few more words to their statements. Currently, there's a study group for the monks, and one person keeps saying, "Dene worldly right view," over and over. Add a lot of adverbs. Initially, they were actually the only ones who truly spoke very much better. But he kept adding this. Later, all the members of their group added the word "Dene Maria." It would be best if we speak only in Chinese during the examination. When we take the oral Dharma examination, sometimes you can actually use the Tibetan. Do you want to try it today? Today we are in front of, because we have to translate. Sometimes it is not enough to just know Chinese without knowing Tibetan. It's really not good to forget your very own language. So today, let's see what is actually said in Tibetan. There's definitely no problem with Tibetan. This is where everyone learns better. Just look at how it gracefully turns. Now, the spoken Tibetan language in some particular specific areas is a bit harder to understand, maybe. But that's okay, it's also a kind of enjoyment. So I'll also learn to speak like you all do. Right, let's try to practice what we just talked about today in class. Let's try speaking in Tibetan and see how it goes. Is your Tibetan better or is your Chinese better? When it comes to translation, it should correspond. Sometimes the Tibetan language is translated into Chinese, and conversely, Chinese is also meticulously rendered into Tibetan. I will also take a moment to say a few additional things sometimes to see how it goes. As I mentioned, this particular scriptural proof is indeed very widely known and highly regarded, whether it's said by Aryadeva, by Bodhisattva Nagarjuna. Most people say that it comes from the ancient Buddhist sutras. Some specifically say that it's stated in the Udāna Sūtra. The meaning is, if one just possesses worldly right view, and under such immense power has great and profound forbearance, then even over countless, many lifetimes, one will never, ever in the future, fall into the truly miserable hell or the terrifying hungry ghost realms. So, in the Avatamsaka Sutra, it is also said that if a bodhisattva is guided by a good spiritual friend, they will not fall into the lower realms. There are such cases too. Bodhisattva being guided by a good spiritual friend. Earlier, we talked about generating right view. Here it refers to not falling into lower realms. In the Avatamsaka Sutra, as for bodhisattvas, of course these bodhisattvas are beginner bodhisattvas. If a beginner bodhisattva is supported by a good spiritual friend's support means being upheld, preventing falls into the 3 lower realms. Such a friend is truly remarkable. One must also truly understand the meaning of generating bodhicitta. Otherwise, if it's just an ordinary teacher offering guidance, they may not necessarily have this kind of ability. This is quite similar to the principle we discussed earlier. So everyone should take a look as well. When you encounter this scriptural proof in the future, it should be derived from the commentary by Master Jikai in order to provide an explanation. Otherwise, in the past, we have also encountered some Khenpos who, regarding this scriptural proof, did not explain it in a particularly satisfactory way. Here it is explained very clearly. Why one does not fall into the lower realms? Because one possesses correct worldly views. It does not mention the view of emptiness. Holding the view of emptiness can prevent one from falling into the lower realms, but in this context it is relying on the power of correct view. Correct worldly view has such great power. This is very important. Therefore, in Mipham Rinpoche's related teachings as well, in addition, it is said that as long as one has correct worldly view, one will not fall into the paths of samsara. There are also such statements in some other teachings. The reason for this is actually quite simple. As we usually say, if one has bodhicitta in one's own mental continuum, as was also mentioned in one of the debate positions of His Holiness, if one's continuum truly possesses bodhicitta, he will certainly not fall into the 3 lower realms. This is also strongly supported by especially reliable scriptural evidence in the commentary on the Bodhikariyavatara. There is reliable scriptural support for this. Scriptural evidence from the Avatamsaka Sutra exists. At that time, His Holiness said this. As we all know, the common statement is, if one's continuum has the realization of selflessness, or the profound realization of emptiness, one will not fall into the 3 lower realms. Not only the 3 lower realms, but one will not fall into samsara at all. So what is being explained here is this fundamental principle. If these fools act carelessly and negligently, they will inevitably destroy their original mind. Perhaps this sentence should be placed earlier, as it would correspond more effectively and harmoniously with the preceding part. The truly wise individuals do not act carelessly or negligently, just as a prudent merchant diligently guards his valuable wealth. This verse primarily conveys the historical account that in times past there resided 2 prominent merchants in the city of Shravasti. One of them was affluent and possessed vast riches, yet he was notably quite negligent and inattentive in his affairs. He often gambled and engaged in sexual misconduct. Later, he eventually became a destitute beggar. The other merchant was relatively poor, but he was very careful and disciplined himself. He was especially diligent, consistently going overseas on long journeys to seek out valuable treasures for trade, and did all kinds of meaningful things. Later, he became very, very wealthy and successful. Then there was a king who, after telling the Buddha about this situation, prompted the Buddha to teach everyone this profound verse in direct response to the specific matter at hand. This is precisely how it is described in the ancient story. The true meaning is that if foolish individuals act carelessly, we all know that in this vast world there are indeed many foolish people. As the commentary says, fools are those who are ignorant. Fools are simply people who are ignorant. They don't understand what to accept or reject. They know nothing at all. In fact, in this world, there really is a difference between fools and wise people. There are both among monastics and among lay people. There are both indeed among the Buddhists and the non-Buddhists. There are both among the leaders and the non-leaders. There are both among business people and non-business people. There are so many people in this world, but among all these people, some truly are. No matter whether they're handling their own affairs or those of others, their wisdom, it seems, is rather lacking. Most of them are truly pretty clueless and quite confused indeed. The things they do are also careless and sloppy. They don't act with much principle or philosophical insight. Some people, even though they may not be wealthy and may not have power, still possess a great deal of wisdom within themselves. This is something you realize after spending some time with them. You'll basically come to understand this clearly. So, as for fools, their body, speech and mind are not restrained in any way, shape or form. They very often engage in unwholesome actions. They have never really heard any truly and genuinely profound or authentic teachings. And even if they have, the teachings have not entered their hearts. Just like the various Brahmas and Indras of non-Buddhist traditions, their actions are also quite foolish. Even though their ascetic practices are exhausting, they still do not yield good results. This includes some of the naked ascetics as well. They also engage in all sorts of practices, such as adopting and abandoning precepts and observing discipline. But in reality, these have nothing to do with true liberation at all. In the end, it is all futile and fruitless. So these foolish people indulge in heedlessness, and because they truly lack wisdom themselves, they will ultimately destroy their very own true nature. As a result, they accomplish nothing, which is truly pitiable to see. When we look at ordinary people in the world, for example, those who do business, there are still significant differences among them. The day before yesterday, I was chatting with 2 fellow villagers. In my heart, of course, I didn't say anything. I just pretended. I said, "You're both right. Both of you are right." But judging from their own ideas about making money, one of them seems to have strong principles. The truly valuable secrets he openly shared about making money sounded quite promising when he talked about them, because in all aspects he is relatively mature. The other person, unfortunately, doesn't have a very good reputation among people indeed. So, among all people, there are differences between the wise and the foolish. As for the foolish, just like in the Sakya aphorisms, there's a special section dedicated to observing qualities of the wise and the foolish, including Nagarjuna Bodhisattva's works, such as the 100 Verses on Wisdom, Treatise on Nourishing Life, but it's called the Tree of Wisdom. In the Tree of Wisdom and other, the differences between the wise and foolish are discussed in great detail. Whether you practice Buddhism or not, you should still clearly distinguish between the wise and foolish. It's very important to know if you yourself belong to the wise or foolish. This is really, truly very important indeed. As for the wise, they rely on their own inherent wisdom in daily life and are very attentive and careful. If we are not negligent, We pay close attention to whatever we do, whether it's speaking, eating, or walking. Whether among people or when we are alone at any given time and in any particular place, we are especially cautious. Of course, some people are overly cautious. It's like they're overly particular about everything, as if they have depression and don't dare to see anyone. They pay extremely close attention to everything. Actually, this might be an excessive form of vigilance. This level of caution may not be truly necessary. If someone is really attentive, what are they like? They are very much like a diligent and shrewd merchant, for whom the arduous task of earning money is certainly not easy, and their accumulated wealth is meticulously guarded with extreme care both day and night. So, for people like this, they should indeed have a very promising future themselves. They also certainly won't experience any great suffering in this particular lifetime. So, ultimately, what the wise refer to as the mind will reach a place of great happiness and peace in the end. If one is truly free from negligence in daily life, one attains the ultimate state of deathlessness through practice. If someone completely abandons negligence with determination, they attain the genuinely deathless state. This is what is clearly mentioned in the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma. Because in many sacred and revered scriptures and texts, negligence is compared to death. If one is not negligent, one does not die. Of course, this doesn't mean that the person will never die. That's not right. In reality, a person isn't negligent, will have many opportunities. So it's not that just because you're a university professor, you are automatically an expert. You can do whatever you want. It's not like that. Nor does being a leader mean you can be negligent. It's not like that. Anyone, as long as they are not negligent, will benefit greatly in both this life and the next. If you are a negligent person, whether you are a petty person or a noble one, ultimately, in the end, you will truly bring considerable and dire endless misfortune upon yourself. Of course, there are some exceptions, people who are especially careful. But due to karmic forces from past lives, or because of various temporary circumstances, even if they are not negligent, there's nothing they can do. In the end, they may still encounter all kinds of troubles, suffering, and adverse conditions. Such situations do exist. But according to the general rule for most people, being especially mindful and consciously aware of one's actions and words is very important. Especially when we speak, actually many people, a significant number of individuals. In Mipham Rinpoche's The Treatise on the Modes of a Ruler, there's a section on speech. If someone hasn't studied this section on speech, sometimes they won't speak when they should. Of course, it's not that I am an expert and tell you everything about it. But when giving teachings, I have to speak as if I understand everything. If I don't use this tone, I wouldn't be able to explain it, just as it is stated in the section on speech. Mipham Rinpoche also said, when it's time to speak, you should speak. When it's not appropriate to speak, you must not speak. Otherwise, if you don't choose the right occasion for your words, in the end, you'll bring about many faults for yourself. Including works from traditional culture like Kaigen Tan, Vegetable Roots Discourse. In Kaigen Tan, there are also observations on this aspect. So the ancients were extremely cautious and remarkably deliberate with their spoken words. Moreover, through the intricate and revealing context in which someone speaks, one can truly begin to see and understand the various kinds of wisdom hidden within a person's heart, including their worries. All of these can be discerned. We often experience this ourselves as well. When we meet someone, if their heart is indeed truly filled with profound pain and persistent complaints, then he keeps talking about other people's faults and so on, saying things like, wow, it's so painful here, and so on. But if a person's heart is filled with positivity and is in a very good state, then in that case, everything they say will be truly filled with positive energy. A few days ago, the Khenpo who is in charge this year went to a Dharma center. He said, wow, this Dharma center is really great. Many of the nuns residing there had absolutely no complaints at all. From their serene aura, from the very way they spoke and behaved, it was quite clear. You could see it from their expressions. It really seemed like they had attained a certain level of spiritual practice. Then I said that I had also been to that place. I also seemed to have felt the same way, because after interacting with people for a while, he probably stayed there for less than an hour at the time. And he could basically tell the state of mind these people were in, right? We also indeed, after spending some time with someone, can tell, wow, this person must be suffering a lot. They complain about everything and blame others for their misfortunes. So, during conversations, the wise in the past would also observe the difference between the wise and the foolish. This verse mainly discusses the difference between the wise and the foolish. The commentary also explains it in this way. Next, it then moreover says, what this means is, how should I put it? Not following negligent actions, not delighting in desires, always maintaining a cautious mind, one attains the fruit of ending all defilements. This is once again profoundly guiding us not to be careless or negligent. The main and crucial point of this verse is to meticulously guide us, repeatedly reminding us not to be negligent in our actions. If we are negligent, the consequences are very serious. Not following negligent actions mainly means not following after them. For example, during meditation practice, some people become very attached to the delightful flavor of meditation, the profound taste of meditative absorption. They often have a strong craving and lingering thoughts about it, which can be quite distracting and consume their focus. They feel it's very, very comfortable to stay in this state all the time, always. Some people keep entering meditative absorption again and again, and eventually it truly seems to become a habit for them. Even when eating or walking, they remain immersed in this meditative flavor and can't come out of it. In fact, if one becomes overly attached to this particular concept, this is also a significant form of negligence. There are indeed much coarser forms of negligence, such as when we act wildly and without any restraint whatsoever. Our behavior unrestrained. That is called coarse negligence. Then there is subtle negligence, where one remains in the most tranquil, non-conceptual state of meditative absorption and is unable to come out of it. This too is a form of negligence. One should not act according to such negligent states, nor be attached to the fleeting pleasure of desire, nor become overly attached to things within the realm of desire. Actually, even in deep meditation, there are some states within the desire realm that one personally enjoys. For example, if there is a particularly special state in the desire realm, one may become very attached to it, long for it, and remain in it for a long time. Although this is not the meditative flavor of the formless or form realms above, but it is still within the desire realm. It is a mindset like absorbed in a single object of desire. If one delights in this way, this too is a kind of sensual pleasure, a pleasurable or joyful feeling that exists within the desire realm. This particular phrasing is really not very good either. Therefore, as dedicated practitioners with profound depth and understanding, we should always diligently maintain a deeply cautious and discerning mind, neither excessively dwelling in a state of mere meditative flavor, nor becoming unduly attached to transient worldly pleasures in our spiritual practice. But rather, we should always maintain a cautious mind and not let our minds become too careless and thus complacent. If we practice shamatha and vipassana, calm abiding and superior insight in this way, then in the very end all of the afflictions within our own personal mental continuum will be completely eliminated. We will attain realization, achieve enlightenment. All the contaminated phenomena, for example, the outflows of desire, the outflows of the desire realm, and the outflows of ignorance are considered to be defilements. The outflows of views, the outflows of wrong views, and the outflows of afflictions, all three types of outflows will be completely eradicated. Ultimately, one attains the genuine and true fruit of arhatship. This is definitely possible. So generally, the first two lines mainly talk about various contaminated phenomena in detail. The contaminated meditative states must be carefully restrained through practice. Even though it may appear that you are in a very peaceful state, in reality, you are still very much subject to certain inherent faults. The latter two lines indeed mainly introduce the state of being truly completely free from any contamination or defilement, leading us into the realm of the uncontaminated. Therefore, in our daily practice, of course, if we are in a very tranquil and peaceful state, one that has completely eliminated all contaminated phenomena and is truly far from afflictions, If we were to enter into a state of meditative absorption, a truly profound and focused state, that would indeed be excellent, wouldn't it? It genuinely seems as though this concept is mentioned somewhere, perhaps in ancient teachings, stating clearly, those who indulge in negligence are always heading toward the path of death. I think this is from the Udāna Sūtra, right? Those who indulge in negligence. If in this context one does not properly avoid negligence, then such a person is always heading toward the path of death. Earlier, we talked about the place of deathlessness, didn't we? Here, if, as just mentioned, within the contaminated phenomena of this world or within the alluring appeal of the form realm, if one practices within the meditative absorptions of the desire realm, then it could indeed be somewhat dangerous. Of course, this particular kind of practice is sometimes truly and genuinely difficult to achieve in reality. Theoretically speaking, it's all possible, but sometimes it's really hard to actually settle the mind down. Even if you can settle your mind at times, is it really correct or not? For example, in the significant and profound 7 treasuries, when thoroughly discussing the numerous and various faults of meditation, it is clearly stated one might think they have attained a certain level of realization, or believe that they are abiding in a kind of undefiled meditative absorption, a state of being. Whether it is truly a meditative absorption or not, that is also quite hard to say. But in these aspects, especially in the higher states of meditative absorption, in the commentary on Pointing Out Instructions by His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, it indeed addresses the elimination of attachment to calm abiding and truly recognizing the original face of the mind of superior insight. In this regard, through scriptural and logical reasoning, it is also explained in a very excellent and comprehensive way. Of course, perhaps many people have never truly studied this particular subject. They don't know how it is. Sometimes I think this way. On one hand, our study and contemplation of the exoteric scriptures is still very important. Every single verse definitely brings us great benefit. But on the other hand, however, in this brief human life of ours, especially someone like His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, such excellent pith instructions from Vajrayana teachings in his life, if these pith instructions are not integrated into our own minds, if we do not recognize the true nature of our own mind, then even though some of us, outwardly, may be very outstanding in debate and possess truly exceptional and remarkable wisdom in composing thoughtful and insightful treatises, and our speech may be eloquent, expressive and unceasing, very good, impressive and brilliant, but if we do not really recognize our very own mind at all, then there are many ways to recognize the mind itself. Especially I feel that for the disciples of His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's lineage, at the very least we should have some understanding of the nature of mind. This is extremely important. If we truly lack this essential understanding, then when sudden death inevitably arrives, apart from having planted some virtuous roots in our own continuum, it may not be of much real benefit, especially since we have encountered such a wonderful Dharma center and such an excellent Vajra master. His profound teachings have not changed at all and have always remained exactly the same throughout time in their essence. For example, the sacred warmth that was gently left by the Dakini is still softly lingering in that sacred space. It has not yet dissipated. At this time, if we truly do not make the effort, indeed, to integrate it into the continuum of our own minds, sometimes it may be a very significant real regret. Other things like not passing a specific exam or not getting a perfect score may be a regret in a certain sense, but the greatest regret in this Dharma center, what is the most distinctive feature? It is the His Holiness's. Didn't we mention this earlier in the journey to the West? The first is to pray to the 3 jewels, the second is to cultivate bodhicitta, and the third is to realize and practice dzogchen. The first 2, praying to the 3 jewels and cultivating bodhicitta, are both present. But as for the last one, I'm not so sure if it's there. If you carefully look at the order in which you joined the class, you may not have reached the Tantra class just yet. In the future, if you smoothly and successfully make it to the Tantra class, I sincerely hope that you will still be very diligent in truly practicing this profound Dharma teaching, at least within this brief human life, so that your mind can truly gain some profound realization. This is probably very important to consider. Next,
Zapa zapa mautop yang tinder vermet masharte, ratamai, sankirta, vermet pater saparan yer.
Even if you have not yet attained the exhaustion of defilements, do not be negligent at this time. Like a lion killed by carelessness with a female beast, the negligent meet downfall. Earlier, didn't we say that in this life one should attain the exhaustion of defilements, attain the fruit of great arhat and realization? Even if in this lifetime, due to various causes and conditions, you truly attain the knowledge of the exhaustion of defilements and eliminate all afflictions and obstacles. For us, this is not such a simple matter. It can be stated this way in words, but in reality it is not necessarily that easy. If that's the case, then at the very least in this lifetime, do not waste your precious human life. What does it mean to waste a human life? It truly means that you spend every day indulging yourself and being completely negligent. Right now, among people, it's true that some young people neither study worldly knowledge nor seek profound dharma. They just waste their precious human life, idling away their days. They never even consider that there are such wonderful things in the Buddha Dharma that could be integrated into their own hearts. Instead, they spend all day hanging out with bad company, constantly chatting day and night, just meaninglessly to kill time. It's really quite pitiful. This is especially completely unreasonable. Don't be so negligent and self-indulgent. In fact, as a person, one should hold oneself to slightly higher standards and stricter requirements. As the saying goes, strict teachers produce outstanding students. This is very meaningful. In this brief human life, haven't we discussed this before? His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche was perhaps unmatched by anyone. When he was 18, he went to Sershul. In just 6 short years, he had fully realized all of his teacher's intentions. When he returned, it was during that turbulent era, but his own right view and mindfulness were completely different from anyone else's. And many examples during those special times, there were so many eminent monks and great masters. So if we look at it from a worldly perspective, they didn't have much time. But why is it that they were all truly able to attain the profound and secret meaning of the sacred teachings of Buddhism? So what exactly is this truly like? It's like a powerful lion that is suddenly encountering a wild female beast while wandering through the forest. In the very end, due to a moment of pure carelessness, it unfortunately gets killed. The real and profound meaning here is that at that significant time, the Buddha and the venerable Shravakas went together to a very desolate place. There, in that very spot, they saw a lion, but unlike an ordinary lion, both of the lion's eyes had been brutally gouged out. Then it had tragically fallen off a cliff and died. After the Buddha learned about this unfortunate situation, he addressed this matter and carefully explained this important principle to those rather negligent monks. What does this truly mean? It means that there was once a mighty lion peacefully roaming in the wild mountain regions. Everyone knows that a lion is the king of beasts and extremely powerful by nature in all situations. But there was a determined female beast that kept constantly following behind it through the wilderness. It kept licking the lion. The mighty lion felt very comfortable and didn't think much of it at all. As a direct result, the lion fell fast asleep in front of the female beast. While it's sleeping, the female beast unexpectedly gouged out its eyes. In the end, perhaps she pushed it off the cliff, or maybe the lion itself had no choice but to fall off the cliff and die that way. What is the meaning of this metaphor? It tells us that many people, even if you have not attained the knowledge of the end of defilements, the highest state of enlightenment, but in daily life you should not be negligent. If you become negligent, it may seem very comfortable at first, but in the end, even if you are a good practitioner, you may still encounter negligence. Because even a truly powerful and formidable lion, if it relies on a particularly weak female beast, can ultimately end up being killed by her. This clearly shows that even those of us who are very strong and capable, in reality, when we encounter negligence because it feels so comfortable, you see, whether you sing and dance every day or whatever, or drink alcohol and smoke a lot, or spend every day immersed in entertainment activities, just like we mentioned before in the book, amusing ourselves to to death. You simply have no idea. Especially for us monastics and Buddhists, if we are constantly in a state of being, a state of mind, where we feel like we're doing well, just eating and drinking, or in a scattered and rather distracted state, it may seem very comfortable indeed to you. But in the end, all your spiritual practice will be completely and utterly stolen away, and you will be left with absolutely nothing at all. In the very end, you will be truly pitiable yourself. So if you are negligent and indulgent, it really brings us a lot of harm. Moreover, people who are negligent are neither content nor have few desires, and their greed only grows stronger and stronger. I think this is mentioned in the Buddha's biography of the teacher, isn't it? There was an old bhikshu, and every time this venerable old bhikshu went out for alms, he was unwilling to venture far away from his familiar surroundings, and would only go begging for alms within his own small village, never straying beyond its boundaries. He was content with simple, plain food, just basic, wholesome meals that were sufficient to satisfy his fundamental needs and sustain his body. He did this every single day. Even when great benefactors like Anathapindika and King Prasenajit appeared, donors present, he still paid them no attention. Later, the other bhikshus might have reported this matter to the Buddha. Then the Buddha specifically called this old bhikshu, the elder, to come over. He asked, "Is this true? Why do you do this? Do you perhaps have attachment or greed for your own village?" The old bhikshu replied, "Oh, it's not that I have any attachment to my own village or to my own relatives, but I feel that as long as I have food to eat and clothes to wear, that's enough. Apart from that, I really do not wish to indulge in overly excessive or truly luxurious food items." At this point, the Buddha also spoke up. He said, "Actually, this particular kind of conduct is something that I very highly approve of within my own personal teachings. My rules are indeed the same as this." The Buddha then compassionately spoke about his own previous past lives. He said that in the past, by the sacred banks of the Ganges River in the Himalayas, in a lush, verdant mountain forest, he had once become the king of parrots. At that time there were thousands of parrots. His own habit was to spend the whole day eating the leaves, fruits, or branches from the tree he lived on, whether it was the fruit, the leaves, or the branches. Other than that, he had no attachment to anything from other places. Later, even Indra was moved by this. Indra decided to test him and came to where he was. Using his immense divine powers, he transformed the entire tree into a withered, lifeless one. In the end, it became nothing but a bare, desolate trunk. He powerfully blew the strong wind, and all the green leaves were completely gone. But at that very moment, there was still some fine powder carefully left in some small hidden holes within the sturdy tree. The parrot king miraculously survived by diligently eating this precious powder. He still did not covet anything from elsewhere. At this point, Indra was also deeply moved. He praised him on one hand, and on the other he miraculously turned the tree into an immortal, everlasting tree, a tree that would never ever die or wither away. So the Buddha profoundly spoke about this, saying that those who are not negligent should be content and have few desires. If one is negligent, they become endlessly greedy, always insatiable. In the end, both spiritual practice and worldly matters become impossible. So this is what is being discussed here as well. Even if we cannot attain the state of being free from all defilements, we still should not be arrogant or excessively greedy. Otherwise, our spiritual practice simply cannot really succeed. If practice cannot succeed, then gradually even being reborn as a human becomes very difficult. Now, looking at our world, some people are extremely greedy, always wanting more. But no matter how much they desire, they can never get everything they want. Their desires are endless. In the end, they themselves are never satisfied. They end up living very pitiful lives as well. So this has already been explained here too. Even if you haven't truly attained the very highest states, you absolutely must not become someone who completely lacks moral principles. You should deeply reflect upon your own mind stream and its contents. And at certain times, you must exercise restraint. This is very important. Now, the last one. Indulging with another's married wife brings these 4 serious faults: loss of accumulated merit, restless sleep, public slander, and falling into hell. The meaning in the Tibetan version is slightly different. As for this particular story, it took place in Rajagriha. There was a man who was extremely greedy and attached. Eventually, he secretly infiltrated the royal palace, and with complete disregard for his own life, he developed inappropriate desire for the queen herself. He then engaged in improper conduct. Later, it seems, he went somewhere else. And then King Ajatashatru, in a fit of great fury, severely punished him with extreme cruelty. In the end, his hands, his feet, and even his genitals were horrifically cut off. In unbearable agony, he was then taken to the desolate cemetery, to the execution ground, essentially to a place where death sentences were carried out. And he was killed there. After his death, he fell into hell. This person was truly pitiful. So the Buddha, the enlightened one, indeed spoke specifically about this significant matter. As mentioned earlier, he was negligent and indulgent, and the Buddha was clearly illustrating the inherent faults of excessive, uncontrolled desire. The point is that those who are negligent and indulgent, who rely on other people's wives or husbands and commit sexual misconduct, such sexual misconduct brings 4 kinds of faults to a person. What are these 4 faults? First, because of the negative karmic consequences, he completely loses all the merit and wealth he originally possessed. All of these are entirely and utterly lost. Second, he develops an increasingly unstable desire for fleeting pleasure. Because of this, his mind is often deeply unsettled and perpetually restless. Consequently, he cannot sleep well throughout the night and profoundly lacks inner peace. Thirdly, he is severely scolded and harshly reproached by both human beings and celestial entities. He is frequently and maliciously slandered in various insidious ways. And the 4th individual, after he ultimately dies and departs from this earthly existence, he inevitably falls into the 3 lower realms of suffering, specifically and most severely falling into the deepest pits of hell, because here the main and crucial point is this, as explained in the commentary. It is like the story of the butcher and the evildoer. I'm not sure. I don't really know how to tell this story. But in essence, it means that because his previous actions were not in accordance with the Dharma, he lost his inherent merit and consequently could not find peace in his sleep, became the target of others' slander, and suffered the misfortune of falling into the lower realms. In the past, there was someone famous in history, the previous life of Vimalamitra Rinpoche, Princess Lian Ming, who in her past life also committed significant sexual misconduct and, as a result, fell into the deepest hell in between, then fell into the realm of hungry ghosts, and finally into the animal realm, 500 times each, over and over again, enduring much suffering and pity. Finally, when she was reborn as the princess of King Trisong Detsen, her life was so short. Of course, this is one interpretation from our words of my perfect teacher. There's another way to explain it. In the biography of Guru Rinpoche, it attributes to sexual misconduct. So if one commits sexual misconduct, even someone like the omniscient Vimalamitra Rinpoche in his previous life, if he experienced such severe karmic consequences, then it's needless to say for others. Therefore, people who are generally not negligent have very pure body and mind themselves. They act with principles and rules in everything they do, and won't behave like worldly people nowadays, who often have neither strong moral standards nor a truly correct understanding of cause and effect. Such behavior is also very frightening indeed. So whether one is a monastic or a layperson, ultimately one must always be extremely cautious and vigilant in their daily life and conduct, and in all their actions. One must be careful and prudent in body, speech, and mind. Only in this way can one truly have good results in this life and in the hereafter. All right, we'll stop here for today.
Udāna Sūtra L15